for the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Featuring site publishers Carrie Murdoch and Josh McQuistion, along with videographer Eddie Radosevich. It's the unofficial 40 on Soonerscoop.com.
All right, welcome back. It is, once again, the unofficial 40 with your entire crew back. Eddie Radosevich, Josh McQuistion. As we are getting ready for the Senior Bowl, and that's kind of what's going on this week. And a lot of recruiting stuff, kind of finishing things up before the final signing day, the actual national signing day going on, waiting on. We've had some eyeball emojis this week that we've investigated. We've got Baker Mayfield out there really practicing well in the Senior Bowl so far. We finally figured this out. I was on the podcast last week when I talked about I was going to get after him for lifting.
For lifting, like, weights?
No, for lifting, like, the Seinfeld episode where the midget is lifting and he gets called out by the other midgets.
Yes. In the shoes.
Yes, uh-huh.
Is he doing that?
Well, that's what my question was. Like, is he lifting?
Because of what he
because
his
like
height?
Every time you saw him in a picture, like with Lamar Jackson or anybody else, he looked taller than everybody else.
I gotcha.
And it turns out he's 6 feet, 3 8 tall.
The biggest, like, bounty gate of all time, as far as people coming after him and saying that he didn't want to be weighed and measured and everything.
He has bigger hands than Mason Rudolph too. I think we need to get Josh to weigh in on this. Hand length. Were you most surprised that Baker Mayfield had bigger hands than Mason Rudolph than the fact that he was 6 feet tall? Legit?
Yeah, I would say. Guys, you've obviously spent a lot more time in Baker's presence. Tiffany was asking me about that yesterday. That's the weird part for me with Baker. He's the only quarterback in like 20 years that I haven't interviewed in person and been around and kind of had some experience with. I've never spoken to Baker Mayfield. So like it's just a weird kind of thing for me to see from afar. But I thought he would be around 6 foot. I thought that was probably pretty likely. But the hand size thing shocks me. I mean, maybe more from a perspective of, wow, Mason Rudolph has really small hands for a guy his size.
Everybody knows what that means.
To go from another Seinfeld, he's the anti-man hands. So,
well, it explains why he has trouble throwing the ball in the rain. I mean, 2 years ago, why Mike Gundy wasn't throwing the ball down the field to James Washington, who has also been outstanding so far in the practices that they've had. Now, James Washington, and I know Josh, he wasn't a big recruit. The Senior Bowl to me has just proven that he has the weirdest body, I think, of any stud athlete ever.
He is one of those guys that, I've watched him for 3 years now, and I always feel like, what are defenses doing here? Because, and he mentioned it in the very first interview he had with the NFL Network. He was like, I've got to work on my route tree. I've got to do all these things. Like, I don't really understand what makes James Washington so good other than he's fast.
Like, he just runs past people.
Yeah, like he's like I heard him talking about the other day, like Willie Gault. Like the guy that could run like 2 routes, but he's so fast and he's so good at those routes that he can have a role in the NFL. Like I don't know that he's a pure number one receiver.
Ted Ginn's the same guy.
Yeah, like it's that kind of deal. And it was just always amazing to me when I would watch Oklahoma State, because every year it was the same thing. Him just catching verticals, him catching post routes. Like there was no more depth to it.
And that's why fans went nuts when you just let him run, when Parnell Motley just lets him run by him in Stillwater, because he's not going to do much other than that.
Guys, did you think? I thought it was very interesting how, I don't want to say willing to throw Oklahoma State under the bus, but kind of did with his I didn't do anything at Oklahoma State like that.
It was,
and we're like, damn.
I thought that was really interesting that he said that he wanted to work on his route tree and how they didn't really have multiple options at Oklahoma State.
It shows me that Oklahoma State's kind of adapted Baylor's offense to some extent, maybe more than we've talked about.
Remember what happened to Corey Coleman?
Everybody that's come out of Baylor.
That's true.
Katie Cannon. He fell out. Did he even get drafted? Didn't he get? He fell out of the draft completely, right?
I believe he went unsigned. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then he's got like a day with the 49ers.
And it's because, he had character issues for one, but he didn't know what he was doing as a receiver. And like everybody, that reputation started to happen where basically Baylor, what they do is they spread their receivers way out on the edges of the defense and compact everything to the middle of the field, and they just let a guy that has unbelievable speed and athleticism get open.
Yeah. And not to
down
say
the field.
It's interesting. I wonder how much OU uses that in recruiting as far as
against them.
Yeah, like we have a Biletnikoff, Dennis Simmons or whoever goes into a house and says, we have a Biletnikoff and we're going to get you ready for the NFL. Look at what D.D. Westbrook did this year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Kind of interesting.
But no, that was one thing. You're right, Josh. I didn't give it as much of a thought as you did, but I was cutting up that audio this morning on the radio, and that he mentioned it in two different questions. He brought it back to the route trees.
It just, like I said, I understand that he has to say it for his own well-being, but there are ways he could have presented that looked a little less like Oklahoma State didn't prepare me for the NFL.
Wonder, has Aitman said anything as far as? I guess it'd be even more interesting if he came out and was like, "Yeah, we run shitty routes down there. Got to work on it."
Well, I said it when we were going into that game this year that Oklahoma State took 3 years to figure out how to use Marcel Aitman, and I know he had some injuries and there was some other stuff going on, but they finally were like, "Oh, if we just throw it to the giant guy, if we throw it higher than the corner, he's going to win most of the time." Like it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
So.
No, he was so good at it.
A quarterback that can make that throw.
He was so good at it, they would rather do that on 4th and 1 than run a running back.
There's no doubt.
Well, Baker's been really good. He got there late, but then he did do the measurements. Eddie we were talking about this before. Everybody was trying to make it out like, oh, he's trying to avoid getting measured.
It was the weirdest
voice.
It was the weirdest thing. Like, you could really see this, especially this week with so much national attention. Like, there are so many people that want Baker Mayfield to be Johnny Manziel or like have that same type of,
because it's an easy take.
It's an easy national storyline, and especially the one guy from Cleveland that Baker ended up putting in a body bag. I thought that was pretty funny. It's
because he was like, oh shit, Cleveland might draft him. I better apologize fast.
Yeah, there's such like a national narrative though about Baker Mayfield. I feel like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just so consumed with the other side of it because we've covered him and have been around him so much.
I've said this before about Baker, and I've talked to Obo about this before too. Like Baker, where Johnny Manziel, a lot of his energy went into look at me, look what I'm doing, look how good I am, come see how good I look, kind of Ron Burgundy thing. Like Baker's, all his energy has really gone into, I want to kick your ass. I want to win.
Yeah.
I want to beat you.
Well, and that's basically...
Like, I don't think Johnny Manziel had that. I think Johnny Manziel played football to be a rock star.
Right.
And I think Baker Mayfield plays football to be the best at football.
And he certainly
does. A rock star because he plays football.
Yeah.
And he knows how to play it up a little bit too, though. I think that he doesn't mind that he is a rock star.
I'm not sure that he's good at. I'm not sure that he's good at being a rock star, though.
Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's.
Well, hell, neither was Johnny.
Well, but no, Johnny was great at it.
Johnny was a functioning alcoholic / drug addict.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. When I'm talking about
not to say that Baker doesn't have a good time.
What I'm saying about Baker is like, I don't want to get in trouble with Baker here, but like, Instagram model, seriously?
You certainly don't.
I guess it's the kids these days that go after the Instagram models.
Yeah, congrats on the sex with the supermodel, though, for sure.
She's an Instagram model. She wasn't a supermodel.
Or, yeah, Instagram model.
I'd like it to be stated for the record that by and large, my experience with, not experience with Instagram models, but looking at Instagram models, I would take them over the supermodel. I'm not the supermodel guy. That's not my lady. So I don't need to have
you're
stars.
saying
The Instagram models look like real girls.
Like Instagram over Victoria's Secret is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, like don't get me wrong, like Giselle is a beautiful woman, like I can see it, but that's
She's
not the
got
kind
a
of girl
man
I'm
head.
into.
I just think Giselle is mannish looking.
Everybody's playing for second right now when you have Olivia Culpo running around.
Who is she with?
Danny Amendola's.
I can see him having
fling.
a super hot.
Oh, my God.
Well, if Edelman could ever settle down, he could have, like, I think they tried to hook him up with all kinds of Victoria's Secret models. And I think he did, but he never wanted to settle down. But, yeah, I could see Amendola doing well.
It's going to be tough to be set up with multiple Victoria's Secret models. That's a rough life to have to live.
Yeah. Eddie's showing me a picture now. I can't really see her face. It's buried in Danny Amendola's head. Oh, my God.
She's not bad.
Yeah. He's doing all right. It's good.
Again, though,
it's
like,
good
she's
to
pretty, but that's just not my deal.
My very close friend, Danny Amendola, too.
It's nice to be Tom Brady's one of his relied upon receivers.
He has to be doing well off the field to be doing well on the field. Tom Brady has always accepted that.
Because Wes Welker wouldn't have ended up with the Hooters waitress probably if he'd been around Tom longer.
You read my mind. Like Wes must have not had that relationship.
Not that his wife isn't lovely, and I could not do that well. So I'll just state that for the record.
I like when people go on that attack. Well, you couldn't get her. Well, no, I couldn't get her. That doesn't
mean I can't judge you for what you got.
I get to judge you.
So anyway, Baker, it's senior day. It's going to be interesting today because Lincoln Riley is actually there, and he's going to be. This starts. We're going to finish up our podcast as it starts, but he's actually going to be live on NFL Network talking as the North squad practices, which is the squad that Baker's on. I just thought it was really interesting watching the highlights yesterday because literally every time Baker drops back to throw the ball, like the entire Denver Broncos staff is just standing right there.
It's going to be interesting. I guess there were so many people I thought that were a little surprised that he was going to even go through the Senior Bowl experience. I think it's...
Why, though? He loves to compete.
That's why I wasn't surprised. I don't think anybody was surprised.
It's just the people that don't know him.
Yeah.
Or don't get what makes him tick.
Yeah, that's true. He has done really well. Is it weird to say he's exceeded my expectations in 3 days of practice? Or 2 days of practice?
I mean, he's just that guy. I mean, go back to all that stuff we talked about, at the Elite 11.
Such a better ball, though, than everybody else. I mean, Josh Allen probably has a stronger arm. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but... He was hitting guys yesterday, and it was just like, yep, seen that before.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff down the field was excellent.
Yeah.
Josh Allen's the only thing I've seen that's like Ryan Mallett. Like, that arm it's stupid, the stuff he can do.
Yeah.
But did you guys see the videos? It's kind of circulated on the internet, I guess, since like yesterday afternoon.
The target practice?
Yes, when he just whiffs on it hard, and, Baker just hit it like it was no thing.
So bad, yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, it's arm strength is, you hear guys that do this, whether they're in front offices or the Daniel Jeremiahs and Mike Mayock's. Like, there's nothing probably in all of scouting that's more overrated than arm strength. Like Joe Montana, nobody on earth has ever talked about Joe Montana's arm strength. Or, like John Elway's that one guy that you're like, holy crap, he had a cannon and he was really good. But most of the guys are just really accurate.
Yeah, Dan Marino, great arm strength, great deep ball, just had it all.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like there are plenty of guys that had good arm strength, but I'm talking about those guys that you're like, holy crap, he could throw it out of the stadium. There are very few of those guys. I mean, Tom Brady's got a good arm. It's not on Elway's level. I mean, that's or it's not on Josh Allen's level. But he can put the ball literally anywhere he wants to in any scenario, and that's why he's special. That's why Peyton Manning was special, who probably had an average to slightly below average arm.
Drew Brees has a good arm, but I would say Drew Brees' arm's not that different than Baker's, though.
No, you could make a pretty good case it's better, or Baker's is better.
There's been a lot of talk about Sean Payton really warming up to Baker Mayfield throughout the week.
We made a joke about this, but we were talking about the hand size thing. I don't know if this is true. It was just a tweet I saw. But I saw someone tweet saying that Sean Payton doesn't want a quarterback if he doesn't have a 9-inch hand.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
his jumping off point.
What was Baker? What Baker?
Baker's 9.5.
Oh, so he made the cut.
And then Mason Rudolph was 9 1/8.
really weird.
Which led to the big
that's
joke.
Like Carney small. That's really small.
Carney small.
Yeah, like he almost needs to be in like a show.
If you're 6'5", yeah, I guess that's small.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Yeah. Like just as it relates to how big a person he is, because he's not just 6'5". That's a big dude. I mean, he's a big guy. So
did you see him up in the booth with the NFL
really
Network
short
crew?
Siciliano.
Yeah, I mean, that was like me standing up against like Hannes Pola or something. It was very funny looking at. Bruce Feldman just tweeted out a pretty glowing, I guess, praise of Baker Mayfield from Louis Riddick. Said that when it comes time for 11 on 11, nobody does it as good as Baker Mayfield. He's been everything as advertised. People are going to try and poke holes against the kid, but you'd be making a mistake to bang against this kid. So he's done nothing but help himself.
What you hope to do when you go to something like this.
And then I guess the next hoop will be jumping through is the combines, when my favorite combine report is he crushed the interview process. He did really well in the interview process.
Yeah. Well,
Guys,
I mean, you'll have pro day before that.
Would?
Yeah.
Like, you guys are around him all the time. Like, Baker strikes me as a really sharp guy that if they can just sit there and talk with him, I think he's a totally different person than what they think he is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, I don't know, Eddie, would you say that we've seen Baker like as natural as he is while he's been here?
I think we've seen...
I mean, I think there have been times when he's kind of put on the act, like when he said, he didn't know who Joey Galloway was.
Yeah, I think so. But you've seen the raw side of Baker, especially after like the Ohio State loss in 2015.
Yeah.
Or 2016, rather. But yeah, I mean, we've seen every side of him. Seen the guy cry.
I don't think there's a side of the guy. I don't think he's just like, it's too old of a reference, but the guy on Leave It to Beaver, Eddie Haskell. There's not like an Eddie Haskell hiding in there, I don't think.
I think he definitely has an Eddie Haskell in him.
Yeah, like Johnny Manziel might have been all Eddie Haskell.
Like there was a guy that tweeted yesterday, some reporter for the Miami Herald saying that, you draft Baker, he's a showsman. He's what you see is what you get. Or no, what he said, he's a showman, and that's kind of the risk that you take if you're going to draft him. Talking about if the Dolphins were to take him, I don't know if I agree with that as much as, I mean, he definitely has a entertainment side to him, I think.
Yeah.
But I think all good quarterbacks have a little bit of that in them. It's like what quarterback isn't arrogant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I've never met a good quarterback that wasn't pretty in love with himself.
Right.
Like, I mean, and it's not a bad, like, because you're going to screw up and everybody's watching you, and every time you do something like, Eddie, God, you're good buddies with Sam. Sam could have a near perfect game, but you throw that late pick, that's all anybody's going to talk about.
Right.
Like, it won't matter that he was damn near perfect otherwise. And that's just the way that goes. And so I think it's almost like at corner where you've got to have a short memory and you've got to, think I'm the best, I'll make the next throw.
I don't, when he goes to the combine, there's nothing. And I would expect if they want him to throw at the combine, he'll throw at the combine. I don't think he'll be one of those guys that's like, no, I'm not. I mean, maybe his agents get to him and he has such an overwhelmingly good performance at the Senior Bowl. He's like, yeah, we don't need to do anything more. And lifting, quarterbacks, when they don't lift, I don't care about that. I mean, I really don't care to know how many reps, guys get. Or I think most quarterbacks just run the 40. And Baker might just run the 40 just to see what he can do it in.
See, that's the only thing I would say Baker don't run. Because we all know he can run and like he's known for that scrambling ability, but I think when you sit and put a clock on it, it's not going to be that impressive.
Yeah.
Like he'll run 4.85 and everybody's going to oh, that wasn't what we thought it was. Baker's just really good at choosing his moments. And he's a good open field runner. He's not a dynamic, like Russell Wilson-like athlete. That's not what he is.
I don't know.
But he can pick up a first down if he needs to.
What if he did it and he ran a 4.5 though?
Well, don't get me wrong. If he's got that in the bag, then I'm just off. But I'll be very surprised if he could break 4.75.
There you go, Baker. There's
challenge
your motivation.
Issued, mm-hmm.
Hello, haters.
All right.
I put it on the board. Like, you can't. He'll keep building, like, people on the internet and stuff. Oh, he's just building chips up. keep building chips up. It's like after you win the Heisman, I think you have to like turn all those chips in, and you have to restart. You have to start with a new foundation.
Oh, he did it. I mean, just the thing that you saw with him holding up the phone of the guy that was questioning him. He's like, can't wait, like Matt Miller or somebody like that. He's like, can't wait to meet.
Oh yeah,
Matt Miller and make him eat his words or something like that.
I saw that.
So he's trust me, through the draft process, people are going to say so much. There's so many mock draft people. There's so many podcasters in Cleveland like that dude that are just going to feed him and fuel him. You're right. I mean, he needs to let go of all the college crap, but by the time the combine is over with and draft day is here, oh my God, he is going to hold every slight and keep it in a little binder for his entire career.
He probably will. There's no doubt about that.
Still quoting stuff from his draft grade.
He could have a Tom Brady-like career, and he'll still be holding on to that stuff.
That's what pushes guys. I mean, that's what makes really. I think that's kind of the difference between just a really good quarterback and obviously a guy that set a bunch of records like Baker did.
All right, moving from OU's old quarterback to their possible new quarterback, Kyler Murray is going to play baseball. We found out today that the Oklahoma spring game is going to be April 14th at 1 o'clock, I believe.
Yep.
It's going to be the same weekend that it's going to be a big official recruiting weekend because, remember, now the juniors, and we're going to get to this, but now the juniors can take official visits that weekend, right, Josh?
That is correct. One guy that Oklahoma actually just offered recently, Credell from the Los Angeles area, corner, he's already tweeted he will be taking his official visit that weekend.
So that's going to be pretty big time. I mean, and that's going to be something like you want to start talking about the fans and filling it up and being impressive, trying to, get, close to 80,000 to a spring game. I mean, OU's never been that school that's done that. Like Ohio State does it, Nebraska does it, Alabama obviously does it. I wonder, like, if fans know, like, that you're going to be a huge official recruiting weekend for juniors, would they be more apt to show up?
I think it will be a humongous weekend in Norman because not only do you have the spring game, OU plays Texas in baseball, softball plays in town. OU, I think, if they do it right, will really hype it up. And most important, it's not on Masters weekend, which I think we can all be thankful.
Which has been your biggest bugaboo.
Yeah, I mean, it's been ridiculous that Masters Saturday is spent at an OU spring game.
With it being an official visit weekend, they probably don't want to have it on Masters weekend now because usually they could just go to the game, go home.
Yeah,
and that was it. They could go watch golf.
I think they will really hype it up though, and especially with it being Lincoln's, I guess, quote unquote first spring game, it will be really hyped up.
I wonder, like, if Lincoln, because what Bob would do, I'm curious to know if the format will change because, like, what Bob had started doing was they would have the spring game, but then another week of practice. So they would use the spring game kind of as a teaching tool, and then have one last major scrimmage that you never really knew what happened in because that would just be the end of spring practice. But I wonder if that will be the finale now because that's a week later than it usually is.
Pulling up the academic spring calendar. I don't even know when spring break is.
When spring break would be. If that falls in the middle. Because, they would usually practice for a week, then take off for spring break, then come back, have the spring game, and then have another 2 or 3 practices after that. So, but I mean, and you remember last year, and Kyler Murray is going to play baseball. How much he's going to play, I think, still. Has Skip Johnson even broached that subject yet?
No, I haven't been over to baseball yet, but there's less than 30 days till opening day, so that is coming.
And they'll have a media day where I'm sure they'll have it's more finalized. And
I think that they'll probably spring break is March 17th through the 25th.
So that'll fall in the middle. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I think that they'll probably end up doing the same thing that they did last year, and I guess ironically, they'll be playing Texas in the same weekend again. If you remember last year, he played Friday night, flew back Saturday on a private plane with Toby Rowland, played in the game on Saturday, and then they flew back down on Sunday. So I imagine that would be the same. And even with the game here, I mean, I don't think he'll probably go from the game on Saturday to baseball on Saturday because they right now they're scheduled for the same time. But I would imagine that he'll play Friday night or be available to play Friday night and Sunday.
See, there were practices last year though where they had a baseball game and he wasn't at them.
Yeah, there was a Tuesday night game at Wichita State that he didn't travel to.
Like I don't think you can do that. Like I mean, I think you have to be at every single practice now if you're Kyler Murray.
Yeah, no, he didn't miss a practice. I didn't think.
I think he missed a couple.
Did he?
Yeah.
Well, I know that he didn't travel with the team.
Or you know what? He missed the
games.
first major scrimmage, I think it was.
For baseball?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine that they work it out this year to where he doesn't do that. And, I don't know.
I would think he's got to be on board with that. Like, you're battling for the starting quarterback job. I know you want to play baseball. Maybe that's your future. But let's face it. Playing baseball this year is not going to determine whether or not he's going to have a baseball career. I mean, even if he continues to bat 200, he's still going to get drafted again when the time comes, which will be this year, I guess.
I think this is a make or break year for him baseball wise because you can't.
But I got to think people look at like Cody Thomas and say, okay, look at his baseball production when he was trying to do both.
Right.
You really can't when it's a major Division I program like this or FBS, whatever it is now. You can't really judge a baseball prospect when he's trying to do both sports.
No, it's tough. And, when Cody did finally settle down and get into the groove of baseball, he did really well in Bedlam.
But
and
it took a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't overnight for him. Like you said, it was Bedlam when he really started making those game-breaking hits.
Yeah, and all of a sudden he got drafted in the 12th round or 13th round, whatever it was, and said sayonara, playing baseball for the Dodgers.
But I mean, to me, there's no choice in that. You're either at every practice competing to win that job, or you gotta look at Austin Kendall.
Is it really that big of a deal in spring football?
Starting quarterback, Eddie.
I know, but I just I don't understand the people that get so bent out of shape about it. I mean, what do you think, Josh?
Well, I mean, it was funny. As soon as you said that, Eddie, all I could hear was Allen Iverson. We're talking about practice, man.
Yeah.
But
is it more about just being the leader?
That's to me what, because I mean, that's the thing, guys. Like, we talk about replacing Baker Mayfield and how great he was. You can't. I don't think you can pay enough credit to what he meant to the team as a leader, as the guy they all look to when whenever. Whether it was on the field when something got tough, whenever it was, whatever the case may be, there was no question who the number one guy that was the lead dog of that whole team was Baker. Now, I don't think it's realistic to expect Kyler Murray to be that guy, probably ever.
It's not really his personality, yeah.
Exactly. But at the same time, for him to be like, well, guys, quarterback, you have to be something of a leader. You just have to. Like, it's just implicit. And for him to be like, well, I'll be here at most of the practices, but I got some baseball stuff going on. Like, I don't know how you react to that after a guy like Baker. Like, it'd be like the guy that replaces Nick Saban being pretty relaxed about summer workouts.
Let me ask you this, Eddie. Would you be okay if he goes back to the Cape Cod League again?
Over the summer?
Yeah.
Probably not. Like, if he wins the quarterback job, you probably need to be around during the summer.
Yeah.
I think that's more egregious, honestly.
Right. I do too. Absolutely.
Because all those other guys were there voluntarily, and you're up in, the Northeast playing baseball and hitting 100.
And Charleston Rambo's a brand new receiver, and you really use, CeeDee Lamb a whole lot, and you got to get Grant Calcaterra, more involved to replace Mark Andrews. I mean, there's a lot of things that you've got to do with your receivers that Baker spent 2 off seasons building.
I think that there probably will be a story there eventually about the Cape Cod League, because I've heard from multiple people that he went up to the Cape Cod League and it was not the experience that he thought it was going to be, and the family that it was like almost an eye-opening experience. It kind of made him grow up a little bit, if you will.
Did I hear like you stay with a racist family or something?
I don't know. I just think that they were like older and like you have a bedtime.
Oh yeah.
You're going to clean your room. This isn't a vacation. You're here to work. And you have chores to do at the house. It was almost a little bit like what's the Summer Catch?
Summer Catch, yeah. That
But
plays all the time on Baseball Network.
But they didn't go to the bar every night.
Yeah.
With Freddie Prinze Jr. and who is it?
JT's wife now?
Yeah,
Jessica Biel.
Jessica Biel, yeah. Great movie though.
Russell Wilson was in that movie.
Was he really?
He was one of the baseball players.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Really? I did not know that
I'm
either.
pretty sure that's Russell Wilson that's on the bench with them. I'm almost positive.
Are you talking about the sleeping pitcher guy that's always asleep?
Yes.
There's no way that's Russell Wilson.
Is that not Russell Wilson? Go IMDb it, Eddie.
I am.
Summer Catch. It looks just like him, though.
He was in Entourage. That's his only actor credit.
Oh, okay. Well, it wasn't then. I swear, every time I see that and it's on Major League Baseball, I was like, I swear to God, that's Russell Wilson.
Carrie, are you one of those guys? Do you make the bad look alike?
No, it's not. I don't. I'm good at identifying black people, okay? I don't think that all black people look the same. But I'm telling you, if you watch that and it comes on, look at that guy. He looks just like him.
I believe the man you're thinking of is Wilmer Valderrama.
No. I can tell Wilmer Valderrama is different.
I know it's like he's like the closer, I think. Like, and he pretty much just sleeps until the ninth inning.
Yes.
Like, and I know the dude you're talking about. He's a light-skinned black guy.
I'm trying to look.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know his name.
Like Eddie, he's like, I've never seen him in anything else. Like, he's not a name you're going to recognize.
Okay, he's not even on the first 25
you
names.
do like the full cast. Yeah, he's just a very random dude sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Shane Beamer is officially hired at Oklahoma, comes in from Georgia where he was the special teams coordinator. It was said that he's going to take over, and we can talk about the coaching situation here too. Said he's going to take over tight ends and H-backs, which I find that interesting. Cale Gundy would still be the inside receivers coach, but I just have to think, and we're going to talk to Beamer and Lincoln and Benny Wiley here, in it's Thursday. Tomorrow we're getting a chance to talk to those guys, so it'll all figure itself out. We'll find out a lot more about it. But, Eddie, you've heard Lincoln Riley talk about, the three phases of three teams, or I can't even remember how he terms it, but, all three phases, talking about they've got to be good in all three phases. I just have to think that he comes out of this year thinking, we weren't as good at special teams as we could have been. Their kickoff coverage, whenever they did have to cover, was bad.
Yeah.
They didn't have really any explosive plays in punt return. They had probably better athletes than they showed in kickoff returns, even though they had good ranking for most of the season because of a couple of ones, a couple by Jeff Badette here or there. But they weren't overall. You never really thought, okay, here they go. They're returning a kickoff. Let's see what happens. It was mostly like Marcellus Sutton's going to return. He's going to run 15 yards and run into a wall.
It's not a good thing when you get excited or when the fans get excited because you return the ball to the 35.
Yeah. But, block punts, we haven't seen anything like that in a long time. Fakes, reverses, anything. Just there's been no – and, of course, Georgia blocks a kick to win, in overtime.
Well, I think there's a growing sentiment that they're just complacent. Just catch the ball, get it to the offense.
Well, let's face it. Bob kind of set that tone.
No, he did.
By putting in guys that he didn't care. He would rather just field the ball – especially on punt return.
It's like he had been so scarred by the Mark Bradley fumble in the national championship game.
Maybe.
That they're just like, just catch the ball, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, let our offense. Our offense is good.
It's funny though that Lincoln Riley, and it sounds like Joe Castiglione talked to some reporters after the Board of Regents meeting yesterday. Shane Beamer, it sounds like, was, if not one or of three names. It was a very short list that Lincoln Riley gave Castiglione and said, this is the guy that I want, or identified early.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how much of that is just, Joe C talk, but it sounds like they knew that they wanted Shane Beamer.
I will say this. Bravo to you, Joe Castiglione, because you paid for a 10th assistant and you didn't just go elevate some GA and pay him $200,000 a year.
You
went out and stole a guy away from Georgia and are paying him, $450? What was that? What was the...
$4 1/4. I thought it was something.
It's $4
something like that.
But it's over $400,000 for a 10th assistant. That's a big-time hire. That's a big-time commitment. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, the whole Cale Gundy thing that's out there. Bruce Feldman put it out there that he might be a candidate for the offensive coordinator or an offensive assistant at Arizona. Now, the Noah Mazzone thing has never been officially announced, so I don't know if there's any hang-ups there. If he wanted to, stay in Texas or go back out west, maybe. I don't know why there's a hang-up there, but the whole Cale Gundy thing. I wrote about this. We talked about it in the Rose Bowl. He'd love to be a play caller. He knows that's not going to happen in Oklahoma. If he got a good offer somewhere at a good school where he could be a play caller and a place where he has a good friend in Kevin Sumlin, I definitely think that that's a situation where he could leave and take that job. Now, would he make a lateral move? I don't know, but I will say this: I think OU and Joe Castiglione are kind of learning that scale, that pay scale, is raising faster than they were willing to recognize, especially with Jerry Schmidt. Of course, they bring in Wiley. They're paying him a little bit more than they were paying Jerry Schmidt, which is probably just saying, hey, that's Big 12 territory. I mean, we want to get you in line with what Oklahoma State and Texas are doing, which I think is fair. Not so much Ohio State, Clemson. Who was the highest is Iowa, which is really strange.
I just don't think Iowa knows what they're doing with their athletic department. They just signed Fran
they just had a good year.
to an extended contract in basketball, and they're like 5 games under 500. But
they had a good year last year.
No, they did. It's interesting.
But, I mean, what I'm saying is, I think like Bill Bedenbaugh and Cale Gundy are two guys that would feel like they deserve a pay raise commensurate with what other people are making around the country that have their same jobs? Absolutely.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, and I was talking to a couple buddies about this. Do you think assistant coaches, with the way that the pay scale is going, because you have assistants now making $2 million, will assistants start becoming just comfortable with being an assistant and making $1.5 million as opposed to taking a terrible head coaching job somewhere?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
not being
you're talking about you're paying assistants $1.7 million or 1 point. What is it? The guy at LSU now is the highest paid assistant at 1.8.
Orlando, I think at 1.8.
Yeah, Randa's at 1.8.
No, Todd Orlando, I thought just got $2 million from Texas.
Did he? Okay,
I thought so.
Okay, that was 2017. So the list I had and looked at before was just from last season.
And what did Herb Hand get for leaving Auburn to go to Texas? Has that come out?
I don't think it's ever come out, but okay. I thought that it was going to be. It was rumored that the raise he got.
Well, that's what I
$2
think we're headed to. Josh, this is where I think we're headed to. I think we're headed toward offensive line and defensive line coaches becoming $1 million a year coaches.
If you're of the elite level, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I don't think there's two positions that where there's talent, it's harder to come by, so you have to be a great recruiter, and B, it's harder to develop. I mean, especially in the offensive line, because people like to think like you just get 5 good, talented guys and it takes care of itself. There is so much inner working between those guys. I mean, I think we all know I could talk O-line crap forever, and I won't do that. But it's so much more than just 5 good players.
It's the In the Trenches podcast with Josh.
Yeah, exactly. Like we could get into our pre-Ohio State where they're going to run 7 offensive linemen out there, but I won't do that. But like receiver, you've got 4 good receivers. They don't have to really know what the others do. Like there's not that same level of a needed relationship. Offensive line, there has to be some camaraderie between those guys, and you have to make that work as a coach to kind of set that up and make that even more possible.
And you have to push those guys. I mean, we've seen great offensive line coaches at Oklahoma.
Sure.
We've seen Mark Mangino. We've seen Kevin Wilson. We've seen we're seeing Bill Bedenbaugh. And the thing about all of them that ties them together is that they are sons of bitches. Like, they are really tough on their players. But you've got to also, Mark Mangino failed at this, and it cost him a head coaching job at Kansas. You've got to be able to kind of love them up, as they say. You've got to be able to beat the crap out of them, tear them down, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to build them back up and let them know that you care about them. And that's where Bill Bedenbaugh is so good. That's where Kevin Wilson kind of figured out how to stop losing guys. Because we've talked about this so many times, like, you once had a problem keeping offensive linemen on campus. Now they don't have that problem because Bill Bedenbaugh walks that line the way a great offensive line coach does, which he's a great recruiter, he's a great developer, and he's great at relationships. And I'd say it's the same thing with defensive line coaches.
And I think he's also shown the ability that if you work hard, if you'll put up with what I put you through, you've got a good chance to go to the NFL. I'm pushing guys to the NFL now. We've got, you can claim, okay, now we've got a first-round offensive tackle. As the years go by, Bobby Evans is going to be a first, second, third-round kind of guy. You've got Cody Ford, you've got Ben Powers. I mean, those guys are all going to be NFL guys, and you keep doing that. Well, it's easier to stomach, okay, he cussed me out in front of everybody today. I mean, not to put Bill out there like that, but just he rode me hard. But you know what? If I can do this, there's a silver bucket at the end of the rainbow. So
I think you messed up your metaphor there.
Why?
I don't want a silver bucket at the end of my rainbow.
No, you're right. It's gold. You're right.
I want the gold, baby.
Hey, guys, I have been up since about 3:30 this morning. So, cut a little slack.
I've been up since 4, and I know my metaphors.
I've been up since 10.
You nap. There are no naps.
I haven't had a nap. I've been up since 4.
But you nap on a regular basis. This has been a mini-night deal with no naps in the middle.
True. Okay, I'm sorry. You think this is over in like 2 weeks, you said?
Yeah, usually because she'll be 6 weeks on Friday. Usually about 8 weeks, you can start really training them on how to sleep, and you start going through some of the things. And we've got kind of a formula we use with Lainey, and we'll do that with Layla too. And it will be it's hard. Like, it sucks for a few weeks, and then they start to kind of get it, and then it gets better. And plus, it'll also help because in a couple of weeks, she'll start going to school with Lainey. So, you get her out of the house, and you can have, if Tiffany needs to come home and take a nap, she can sleep for an hour, and then we go get them. So there's ways to, find a little time for yourself, because right now, she won't really sleep unless she's sleeping on someone or it's nighttime. That's the only 2 times she'll sleep. And so you have to carry her around. Like, I was, emptying the dishwasher yesterday holding a 5-week-old. So that's a ton of fun.
Do you have one of those straps, front side straps that
it's a baby
she
Bjorn
sits in? Yeah.
Yeah. Tiffany has one, and I've never, I don't know, it feels weird to me to wear it. I'm I can't get my head around this. So I'm comfortable carrying her in any way. That's fine. But I never do the hands-free ones. I don't know, something about her being right there, even though I hold her right there. I don't know why it's different, but I can't get my head around it. I'm against it for some reason.
Are you okay? Hold on. We're watching. We're just turning the TV here. Eddie, I'm trying to get your look. Is your look, boy, she's hot, or what a stupid headline? You gave me a head nod.
Oh, no, I was just Tiffany Blackman.
Oh, is that Tiffany Blackman?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice who that was.
She's all over the NFL Network
I
these
may
days.
be having black blindness.
Yeah. No, it's Tiffany. She's a star now.
Carrie,
Yes,
I've long excused Tiffany because Tiffany can make some...
she's outside in a toque and it's 12 degrees. She's all bundled up. If her hair was out and stuff, I could tell who that was.
She was bundled up. You got an out.
Okay.
No, I'm a big...
I swear, I can
love
tell
Tiffany.
Black people apart. I'm really good at it.
We're gonna have to get a race lineup card.
I'm good at it. I'm telling you.
See, but Carrie, you can kind of get away with it. You grew up in Duncan, man.
Yeah, we had 3. We had Clayton Franklin. We had Yusef Sanders, and God, what's his name? He's on Facebook. I'm gonna get killed because I've talked to him recently. But we had 3 black guys in my class.
Yeah. There is something, because Tiffany is terrible about it. And Tiffany is as sweet and as good natured. There's nothing about it.
Wayne Diggs. Unsavory. Wayne Diggs. That's who the other black guy was.
She's just really bad at differentiating black people.
I'm gonna tell you, I thought
she owns that about herself.
I was fearless on a football field until about 9th grade, when I was at linebacker, just killing everything in sight. Until Clayton Franklin came in at running back, who was probably in 9th grade, probably 6'3", 210 pounds. And my head met his knee as he was trying to run through me because I was probably 5 foot. In ninth grade, I might have been like 5'6", 160. And that's the first time I ever got a concussion. I had to go sit over on Pud Row. Like, that was when, like, they made you go to Pud.
Go sit with all the losers that didn't practice.
You had to go sit. Like, if you got a concussion in practice, like, nobody even called them concussions. Just, if you got knocked woozy and you couldn't go back into practice, they'd make you go over to Pud Row with all the losers that couldn't even put on their shoulder pads correctly.
That were on the team and practice like 4 times a year.
Yes, exactly. What did they call it at your school?
We didn't even talk to those guys. I don't even know what they called them.
But that was the only time I had to be on Pud Row is when Clayton Franklin, I met him in the hole. And
I think there was always that one time in high school football or even maybe middle school for guys that played in middle school. It's like that moment where it's like,
you realize you're not invincible anymore.
Yeah, and like, I'm probably not going to have a future in this. Like, there are guys that are physically just bigger than me.
Mine, I can honestly say it. I guess I had one in junior or in like Little League when we played this team. We played a team from Tulsa. My Little League team was actually really good, and so we played in all these state tournaments and kind of did some outside the state stuff. So
Little League bowl games.
Yeah, like Eddie, a bunch of the guys went to North, like Zach Newby and some of those guys. Like I played with all those guys, Jay Jensen, like some of those guys.
My cousin.
So yeah. So I grew up playing with a bunch of really good players, and we went and like we always won. You know, in Oklahoma City, we won all the time. Like we were just a better team. Well, we go up to Tulsa to play the state championship game, and I can't remember what it was. You know, the state like the Pee Wee of Oklahoma. I didn't know what it was. So we go up there and we're like, we're going to kick these guys' ass too. This is going to be fine. And the opening play of the game, I'm on kick return, and I'm dropping back in to set up, you know, basically at that point a wedge, you know, when you could still do that in football. And this kid comes up, and I mean, he's probably up to about my, like, chest bone. Like, he's right there at my sternum. That dude hit me so hard. Like, I never saw him coming. I was like, this little dude, I'm going to crush him. He knocked me on my ass. And we find out after the game, Tulsa played it differently. It wasn't according to your age. It was according to what grade you were in. So some of these kids, like I'm like 11, and these kids, some of them were like 13 or 14. They've been held back or whatever, and they beat the piss out of us. So we never played games like the whole 4 quarters. Like it was usually over by halftime or third quarter. Our head coach ran our league, so we got all the best players from our league. Like it was dirty and foul. But we were always really good, and so we had no idea how to deal with that. Like, and they just beat the crap out of us. And my other story is Jamal Brown beat me up and down the field in junior high. So that was my other wake-up call that football was probably not my future.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
And that's how 3 white guys got to here.
Tales of 3 white ex-players.
All right, I want to get back to Shane Beamer for just a second, but look, it's kind of been made out like he's going to work with Jay Boulware, but I would expect wouldn't you guys expect a big part of what he's doing is special teams at Oklahoma?
When you bring in a guy with that much of a background in special teams who is the son of like maybe the godfather of special teams, I have to think that it is a signal of something to the effect of him taking over.
I think Frank kind of has that Bob Stoops job at Virginia Tech where he's like a special assistant.
Oh, I bet Frank Beamer stops through Norman a couple times.
What I'm saying is, you know, I'm assuming that he and the wife maybe have some kids. Maybe Frank comes down
they have 3 kids.
Come down to see the grandbabies and spend some time around the Switzer Center, maybe saying, hey, why don't you do this on special teams?
I bet there is 100% chance of that happening.
So your last name is a verb in special teams play.
Yeah,
Beamer ball is a thing. Like,
yeah.
I mean it's valid. Like they were great on special teams for 20 years. So to me, it would be just such a monumental waste if he isn't. Because I know Jay Boulware has a background in it too, and that's fine. But have the special teams been anything special since Jay arrived? Like the running back play's been fine. It's not that Jay's not pulling his weight. It's just I don't know. That you can
solid.
say that there isn't a need for a look at something else.
It's been solid, but it hasn't been anywhere near exceptional.
It's kind of beating a dead horse, but I think, you know, especially after the Rose Bowl and you saw Seibert the way that, a couple punts weren't very good in the second half. It'll be interesting if they try to go back in and take him and at least eliminate a couple duties. I mean, he was so good at kickoff this year. I think he might have led the country in touchbacks, but at the same time, I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot.
Georgia had a guy that was just as good.
Yeah,
even on kickoffs.
If they can go recruit a four-eyed freak like the kid from Georgia, I forget his name, but he was really good.
Ruben Gonzalez, I don't know.
Something like that.
Okay, so press conference will happen tomorrow. We'll get to talk to Shane Beamer. We'll get to talk to Benny Wiley for the first time. Get to talk to Lincoln Riley about these hires. But Benny Wiley comes in, takes over. He is, his salary has been thrown out there. He's getting paid, in line with Oklahoma State and Rob Glass and Texas and their guy, Kendrick or something. Anyway, but I mean, that's, to me, like I said, I think it's just as much about relating to the players, making sure that guys, feel connected to the program in the offseason, that guys just don't leave. Maybe things like Abdul Adams don't happen, because I don't know, Josh, if you got a chance to read that article from his father and his high school coach, but I always thought that Abdul got kind of screwed over, and that article basically said that he felt like he did get screwed over, and that's why he left.
I can get there to a point. Like, I understand that. I mean, they kind of said, well, it wasn't ruled a fumble, so against Oklahoma State. Come on, you got to be able to count on him hold on to that ball. Like, there was and they said, well, he only got 11 touches in any given game. Well, he had a couple of fumbles. Like, so you're kind of almost hurting your argument that he didn't get the ball many times. He still had a problem hanging on to the ball. And the bigger part is, okay, we all saw what Rodney Anderson became toward the end of the year. So as Adams' time started to dwindle and Anderson started to grow, what about, guys, we all know, anybody that listens to this pod knows I was a big Abdul Adams guy. You cannot convince even me that you want to take a single carry away from Rodney Anderson in the second half of last year.
No, but there were plenty of times before that Kansas State game, maybe Texas namely being one, where they just didn't use, and Abdul Adams had the ankle injury, which kind of hurt. Maybe if he doesn't have that ankle injury, maybe he does become a bigger factor and kind of solidifies that job, and maybe Rodney Anderson never really even emerges this year.
There were a lot of things that went in to, I think that obviously the Ohio State fumble, but he didn't even dress out for the Texas game. So it
was Iowa State and then Texas.
Right. There were a lot of things that went into that. But I think you could say that, I don't know, I think he probably has good reason to feel screwed, but at the same time, this is kind of getting to the point, especially, and not to say that Abdul was processed, because he definitely wasn't, but I think that's the type of attitude this program needs to take on a little bit of.
A little more cutthroat?
Yeah, a little bit. It needs to stop being so.
But Trey Sermon had a fumble,
friendly.
And they didn't, yank him.
Well, he's better than Abdul. I think, just flat out.
I don't think that was the case, and I don't think in certain situations that's the case.
Right.
I mean, I'm on record as saying Trey Sermon at times is too patient.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can be a little choosy. Guys, I want to come back to that, but we were talking about O-line and D-line and the importance of it, and somebody just tweeted out a stat, and I thought we could just kind of put a period on that. Clemson next year will have 15 four-star defensive linemen on their roster.
Jesus.
OU has 5. I
don't even understand how you can get 14 defensive linemen in a program at one time.
I know. Don't get me wrong. They run a little and I kind of did that. That's purely with OU running their 3 scheme. So if you wanted to add like Jalen Redmond and Addison Gums, Mark Jackson,
so the number's up to 8. 9. Yeah, 8.
Yeah. So then you're halfway to what Clemson's done. And what Clemson's done is just ridiculous because of what they have returning. They landed 2 more 5-stars this year, including Xavier Thomas, who's just a freak. But yeah, so again, we'll go back to Abdul Adams, but I just saw that and I was like, holy crap, that's why if you have elite defensive line coaches, you need to pay them big money.
Yeah, well, let's talk about let's move on to recruiting a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, I digress.
No, that's a great segue because defensive line is something that Oklahoma is really focused on here down the stretch, at least for 2018. 2019, I know they're already kind of trying to jumpstart that a little bit. But Josh, there were some eyeball emojis out. I mean, we're sitting here waiting on Leon O Neal, which doesn't look particularly promising for Oklahoma coming off a Clemson visit, and then he's going to make his announcement. But let's talk about what's left down the stretch here. And obviously, Michael Thompson took a recent visit to Oklahoma, but defensive line-wise, how what's Oklahoma looking at finishing? I know we got Jomo in there too, and he's taking
really
some visits.
To me, those are the two primaries. You've got Michael Thompson, the defensive lineman from St. Louis, came in for an official visit last weekend. I was kind of on the fence. Like, I could understand why Oklahoma could make a move with him, having some regionality. It's not like USC that he'd looked at before, or Alabama that's a long ways from home. It's still pretty regional to St. Louis. So I thought maybe OU could make a run. Plus, everybody's kind of had him leaning toward Missouri. So he can go to Missouri and he'll be the man, and it's a big deal for him to be in state. But Missouri's never done that well in St. Louis. That's kind of been an issue for them, kind of like Houston was for a very long time for Texas. They just never could seem to really make inroads in that area. And I know Missouri really tried this year. But, you look at Ayodele going to Texas, Ronnie Perkins going to Oklahoma, Cameron Babb going to Ohio State. They really struck out to a large degree. So I think that's kind of been interesting to watch. From what I can gather, I think Oklahoma is in really good shape here. There is a lot of time for things to change. Obviously, we're just under 2 weeks until signing day is here. He'll announce on signing day, which he put out earlier this week. He's expected to announce a top 2 at some point this week. I think everybody expects that to be Oklahoma and Missouri, and he'll announce at his school on signing day. There are things that can change. There are things that can happen. If I'm picking right now, I would pick Oklahoma for him. Now, on the flip side, you've got Moro Ojomo from Katy, Texas, who is going to go to Texas this weekend and then is expected to go to Oregon on the final visit weekend. I think it's Oklahoma and Texas for him right now. I think Texas is probably a little bit out in front. I know talking to some people at Notre Dame, that was kind of the impression they got, that, I like Notre Dame, but I think I'm going to stay closer to home, and that Texas might just have a little bit of edge between OU and Texas. A&M's kind of fallen off with him a little bit. I'm not exactly sure why, but it just seems like that's kind of faded a little bit.
Kind of hurts when you lose your defensive line coach, too.
It doesn't help. Now, now that started even before the Jerry Montgomery chaos. But, yeah, so, I mean, that's it just seems like OU, Texas. I think OU does still have a shot here. I think probably next week they'll go in and do their in fact, I'm almost certain that Lincoln Riley would then do his in-home next week with his Jomo and try to make that final push. So that's kind of the thing to watch. But I mean, we can go over to some other positions.
Let me ask you on Michael. Let me ask you on Michael Thompson, because I mean, obviously, things change with a kid in his last semester when he knows, okay, this is getting down to nut cutting time. My grades haven't been the best. A lot of times, those kids can meet with counselors, meet with principals, meet with the school, and try and find some type of a track that can allow a kid to get eligible or to what he can do. Maybe go back and make things up, but. Have you heard anything positive, negative in terms of his academics and any ground he could make up?
Everybody I talked to makes it sound like his first semester of his senior year must have gone very well, because there is a total turn of how people are talking about him. And don't get me wrong, it's still close. He's going to have to do well this semester. He's going to have to, pass all his classes, probably has to hit a certain GPA point. I won't pretend that I know the exact numbers in it. But the expectation from what I gather now is that he will qualify. And I think that's why you've seen this huge run on him as of late, which Oklahoma really led. And I think that's why Oklahoma is where they are, because I think almost immediately after returning from the Rose Bowl, they sat down and realized, okay, we need to add some size. We need to get some more bodies up front. And they thought he was the best available lineman to help them. They went after him and are, like I said, in good shape to land him. So, and that's a guy, I mean, you kind of wonder, did they gain from Devonta Lampkin leaving? I mean, because they still have Overton, they still have Fa'amatu, two guys that are workable players. They're not Lampkin's upside, but frankly, Overton's a much steadier guy than Lampkin ever was. So, and they get to sign this young guy who's going to basically take Lampkin's spot. if they can get him. So, like I said, it's not certain. But I think from a guy that probably, even back in December, I think most people were giving him about a 30% chance to sign. Now it's probably more like 65 or 70% that he not sign, but to qualify. And I think that's about where it is now, somewhere between 60 and 70%. So there is a lot of optimism that he's going to be able to get in at whatever school he chooses.
All right, one of the names that's out there, it could, by the time people listen to this podcast, it could be decided, but Leon O Neal, back from a Clemson visit, says his trainers or whatever you want to call his people, 7v7 fast, whatever, they said turn on notifications for Leon's announcement, and then nothing ever happened last night. Where do you think things sit with Leon O Neal as we do this podcast here on a Thursday mid-afternoon?
Well, to be fair to them, they then deleted that tweet a little bit later.
Did they really? I didn't even notice
that. So that was the thing. I didn't even notice it. I quoted it and kind of said, hey, this is what's happening, explaining what their tweet meant. And then about 5 minutes later, every time I would see a retweet, it said tweet not available. So it became clear they deleted it and went back and looked for it, and I couldn't find it. So they never explained it. There was never any answer to what happened. From what I can gather, Leon, whether you want to call it a silent commitment, I think everybody knows I kind of hate that term. But if that's what you want to call it, that's fine. He gave a silent commitment to Clemson over the weekend. Came back, was probably going to make it public, announce, and then from what I can gather, A&M caught wind of it and tried to stop it before it went public. There was a picture that showed up with Tim Brewster, one of A&M's new assistants, showing up meeting with his 7-on-7 coach, who is a very big factor for, whatever reason. God, I'll try to steer clear of my haughty derision over that.
Somebody call the FBI. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that has a big role in his decision-making process for some reason. And I think got in his ear to slow things down and to give A&M a little more time and to kind of work some things out. So I think Clemson is definitely the bet right now. A&M's trying to turn things around. But for me, talking to some of the people I've talked to, I don't think Oklahoma is really even that concerned about it at this point. I think they know that they're a long shot. They're going to keep recruiting him until they know that they're not going to get him. But I think until he commits somewhere else. But I think they're pretty realistic that it's unlikely he's going to pick Oklahoma at this point.
One of the more interesting, I think, storylines coming out of Oklahoma's first junior day was the offer to Brayden Willis, Josh. Arlington Martin, 6'4", 210, tight end, H-back, somewhere along those lines. What can you tell us about initially just the offer going out so late to a 2018 kid? And what can you tell us about Brayden Willis? Because I think there for a minute we were kind of having to decide or decipher, was this a preferred walk-on or was this actually a offer given out?
And just in case there's anyone who's not, obviously on the site, hey, go sign up now. You'd know this a week ago. But it's a legitimate offer. This happened. This is a real thing. I think what it comes down to, guys, and it's stuff that we've heard, one is obvious. The fact that Grant Calcaterra is the only pure tight end in the Mark Andrews mold currently on the roster. That's a lot of fire to play with. That's really – and then you add in – that the position group that's kind of, locked at the hip with it is H-back. They only return Jeremiah Hall. And, Carson Meyer fills in somewhere in both of those roles.
Right.
And, guys, we all know that the buzz we hear on Jeremiah Hall is not glowing right now. I don't know how you would term that. I don't know how seriously to take it at this point because he's so young and it's so early. But I think everyone just thought he was going to plug in and be the next Dimitri Flowers. And there's some pretty strong indication that's not the case.
Yeah, so, I don't think we're not talking about the same lineage of go all the way back to, I didn't even know J.D. Reynolds, you have to go back that far, but definitely Trey Millard. Dimitri Flowers just became an incredible player at that. He redefined that position.
He was underappreciated, I think, just as far as how much he did and how early he did it.
And how big he was in huge games, moments.
Yeah, he was a constant at that position, and you knew exactly what you were getting from him.
You go back to that first win at Baylor when Oklahoma won their first Big 12 championship, the year they went to the CFP for the first time.
Yeah.
That touchdown he had.
Yeah.
He became known for those type of plays throughout his career. Ohio State, the first touchdown against Ohio State, he became such a weapon, and I can see why Lincoln Riley's committed to having a coach that comes in here that coaches tackles and H-backs or tight ends and H-backs now, because he realizes the value of that position to his offense now.
I think, other than Baker Mayfield, I mean, clearly Baker's going to be the toughest guy to replace. I think he's the second toughest guy on that roster to replace because of all the ways he made OU's offense better. You could put him out there, and you could literally do anything. You could run power formations with him. He could be a flex tight end. He could be there was literally most H-back, fullback types, when they're on the field, you kind of know what the offense wants to do. There was no dictation from him. Like, you could do anything you wanted to do within your offense with him on the field.
He could block, he could run, he could catch, he could be a tight end receiver. Yep. Baker just handed off to him at the first Senior Bowl practice.
It's going to be interesting to see he's one of the guys that you really haven't heard a whole lot about from Mobile. And I don't think very many fullbacks and tight ends you hear about what they're doing or what they're up to, but it's going to be interesting to see kind of where the NFL projects him, because I think there is a spot in the NFL for a guy like a Dimitri Flowers for sure.
Oh, I think
if he finds the right offense, he's a 10-year guy.
Yeah, I think
he'll be there a long time. But he's got to find the right role.
Seattle or somewhere like that can be pretty inventive with an offense.
Yep.
He'd be huge.
I'll imagine him. Same deal, playing off the fakes of a guy like Russell Wilson, doing that same RPO stuff that Baker's done with him forever, and having, like I said, Baker's a good runner, but having a guy like Russell where the defense has to respect that fake so hard, Dimitri's going to run through the secondary open more than once. So that makes a lot of sense.
All right, Josh, the first junior day, I know it wasn't the superstar gala, but there were some big names that came in. There's going to be another junior day, which I know you guys have been pointing to could be a huge junior day for them. But what did we learn coming out of that first junior day?
Well, it wasn't the big news day that I think maybe some of us had thought it might be. It kind of lost a little steam when Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver from Lake Travis, same high school as Baker Mayfield, actually ended up canceling the night before. Or not canceling, but he kind of announced that he wasn't coming the night before. And he almost immediately, kind of coinciding, he talked about picking up an offer from Oklahoma. So clearly Oklahoma was going to offer him when he got to campus, realized they couldn't wait until the February junior day, so they went ahead and made that offer. The only guy that did pick up an offer was Stacy Wilkins from Camden, Arkansas, a 6'7", 260, 270-pound offensive tackle that, I've never seen him in person, but talking to people that I know and that kind of knew Orlando Brown and knew Adrian Ely, they're like, man, he fits perfectly into Bill Bedenbaugh's type of offensive tackle. So, it's really – he's a natural fit now. Obviously, recruiting guys out of Arkansas is always going to be really tough, just because Arkansas – it's the same situation as Oklahoma. There are such a small talent pool. They really work hard to make sure those guys that are at their level, they land. And also, it's an SEC state. There's always that kind of – you have to fight against that idea that, well, the SEC's better even if we're going to play at Arkansas against Oklahoma. So
I've never understood how the argument against that just has to be, do you want to play for a competitive school?
And that's one of those things, like Eddie, like we talked about Michael Thompson earlier. Like, do you want to go to Missouri and hope that you're going to be, best case, maybe compete for an SEC West title?
Yeah.
Maybe. And, with the way Georgia's going now, I think those days may be over.
But with that said, I do think that Chad Morris, they'll at least get to a bowl game. They'll maybe get back to winning 7 games a year. So,
Chad Morris is a good coach. Arkansas is not a bad school or anything, but they're
a fun school.
Never going to consistently compete on Oklahoma's level. It's just not going to happen.
It's a fun school too. I've heard great things about Fayetteville. And that has nothing to do with
it. We could inject jokes about, Oklahoma liking.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with Baker Mayfield's experience. I have heard that it is an extremely awesome place to go.
All right, so, coaches, Josh, I was kind of thinking about this the other day. Coaches are out and about, and the fact that they have so much of this class put together, you see so many new offers going out right now. It really is. Is this kind of turned into more of a setup, not just trying to finish off the 2018 class, but almost out there kind of putting their first step forward to try and get guys that now that juniors can visit, get those guys knowing them a little bit so they want to come to Oklahoma and have a April to June visit period?
It's real. I mean, to me, that's exactly what this is. And that's, I had somebody ask me, well, why is Oklahoma making so many offers at defensive back and that kind of thing? Well, that's just kind of policy. But you look at all around. I mean, there are a bunch of offers out. And, Lincoln Riley hitting the road the last few weeks. He went to Virginia. Well, you didn't have any 2018 guys in Virginia. He went to see Devin Ford, the 5-star running back. He went to see Cameron Kelly, the kind of wide receiver corner kid that I think they like at DB. So there is a clear flavor of 2019, even at the very top of Oklahoma. I mean, they're certainly hitting up the key guys. We'll get into maybe some Tank Jenkins talk here in a little bit, who is another guy that I think maybe could have a decision by the time some people hear this podcast. So there's a lot still to work on in 2018, but there's no question they are recognizing that 2019 is going to be very interesting because it's just like the early signing period. Well, now we've got to figure out how the recruits are going to handle this early visit period. Are they going to use all 5 of them in the spring? I mean, are they going to kind of go crazy? Or are they going to say, well, I'd like to see it on a game weekend. I'd like to wait a little while. I don't want to have all my officials done and then, have to wait until December to sign and not be able to really take any new information. There's a lot of ways that can go. And I think, and for the coach's side of it, do we bring this guy in April or June, and then by the time he decides in December, we've lost all our momentum? So there's so many ways to kind of look at that, and I think that's going to be really interesting to see. But, yeah, I mean, somebody asked me the other day kind of to put a basement on how many official visitors to expect for that spring game. If there's less than 5 or 6, I'd be very surprised. I think Oklahoma will probably bring in 7, 8, 9 and really make a big deal out of it and hope they can get some big push in the spring, maybe get up to 10, 12 commitments, and then really start zeroing in as the summer and fall goes on under those guys that they want to finish this class out. And this class will be a smaller one, so it'll probably at that point be 6 or 7 guys that they're really still trying to land.
Let me ask you, Beamer has been a recruiting coordinator before. What do you think he brings to the staff as a recruiter?
Well, it's an interesting deal because I immediately hit up some of my Georgia people, and they kind of acted like, he's okay. He's not they didn't act like he was one of the superstars of the staff, but he did land Luke Ford, who was the number 1 tight end in the country. Yeah. And the kid, when the news broke about Beamer, he actually just tweeted out, wow. You could tell he was upset about it. He wished Beamer luck after the fact, but initially you could tell it bothered him that the guy was going somewhere else. And you look through his list of other players he's been involved with. I mean, you're talking about Zamir White, the number 1 or number 2 running back in the country, kid from North Carolina. A lot of the premier guys that Georgia was in on, Beamer had some role in. And so that's meaningful. I mean, that can open up some doors. I think it's interesting, like I just mentioned, Lincoln Riley going to Virginia. Well, you think Beamer doesn't have some pull in Virginia? Go to Virginia Beach and all that talent out there, Roanoke. You start going through those areas, you might be able to open up some doors that maybe you haven't been able to before and start having these Atlantic guys maybe work out a little better than Abdul Adams or, I had another one on the tip of my tongue and I've now forgot, Ricky DeBerry. Where Oklahoma's landed some guys out there, but maybe they haven't turned out like they wanted them to.
I think it's interesting as I'm sitting here watching highlights that Baker is kind of attached to what's his name's hip. Josh Allen?
Yeah, there's no way that's an accident.
Yeah, he's stretching right next to him.
Mm-hmm.
They're throwing together. They're taking reps back to back.
You almost wonder if both of them wanted it that way. Like Josh Allen can stand next to Baker.
Josh Allen doesn't want it that way now.
No. As things are starting to progress, you're right. But people are going to be like, okay, we could have that 6'5", and his hands are like 10.5, some huge number. Hands, yeah. Like he's exactly what they physically draw up to be a quarterback. And then he's like, you could have me or you can have Baker. But then they watch him start throwing the ball, and while Allen, like we said, is going to make a few throws that just drop your jaw, at the same time, Baker is consistently just going to be right where it needs to be and right on time over and over and over again.
I should say congratulations to Eddie Radosevich. He got retweeted by Lincoln Riley yesterday.
We are now best friends.
And then the Masters thing happened. Where
He knows. He's been listening. Lincoln knows.
How much time do you think Lincoln spends a week listening to the pod? I think it's got to
2
be
hours.
At least half of it. Yeah
2 hours.
What did he tweet out? He tweeted out Oklahoma to Tennessee to West Virginia to Massachusetts, New Jersey, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, and then to OK. So he's got time to kill.
He's been
Lincoln,
racking up the miles.
If you're listening to this pod tonight, like when you're traveling home, give us like an emoji. Give us like a weird emoji. Like throw an emoji out there that like everybody's like, what the hell is that? Like I'm trying to go and pick one right now.
And you have an open invite to come join anytime you want.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, I'm trying to think of the right emoji. My emoji game is so weak, though, that I probably should just steer out of this.
Send
completely.
out the dick pickle.
No, he's not going to do that. There's no way he's doing that.
That would be legendary. That would be like he could just quit Twitter at that point.
Rapper 50 Cent confirms he accidentally made around $8 million in Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
He accidentally made.
He was one of the first rappers to accept Bitcoin.
You know what? I know a guy that bought a bunch of Bitcoin because he wanted to gamble offshore, and that was the only way that you could do it. And it just kept going up and up and up, so he's just kept it.
I saw something the other day that if like I want to say it was like late November. If you'd have had like $1,000 investment in Bitcoin, now it'd be like worth $110,000 or some crazy thing like that.
It's insane.
I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. Yeah, I don't understand any of it though.
It's currency that no one can track or trace.
And it's currency that how can I ever like the world will have to start using Bitcoin before I could cash in, right?
No, I mean you could
How do you cash out? Could you cash out right now?
I think so. Yeah.
And get cash?
I just have to find someone willing to buy.
People will buy your Bitcoin from you.
In real cash?
Like especially right now, yeah.
You just have to find somebody dumber than you.
I wouldn't say that that's necessarily the case.
I mean, there was a guy that's in it that was actually became richer than like Zuckerberg the other day. Like there was a Bitcoin guy that for like an hour was the richest man on the earth
because it shot up.
It went so crazy for there was a little bitty run. Like it may have been like a month ago, but like I was reading an article about this and something the other day, and it's just crazy some of the numbers that are being put up.
I just don't understand it. Josh, who's the one guy from the Senior Bowl that you've watched all week that is a can't miss guy that maybe nobody knows about?
Oh,
is the guy without a hand?
Do you like the kid from Humboldt State?
The Humboldt?
Humboldt, yeah. The offensive lineman that Mike Mayock loves.
He needs time. He's clearly really raw, but I mean, it's not an athletic deal. Like it's not like he can't move his feet or anything like that. You can tell he's so clearly used to like when he'll meet a guy at the corner that I could just physically overwhelm this guy and I'm going to throw him around and I don't see like he just can't do that when he starts playing elite guys, and he'll have to figure that out. But I think he's a good athlete. I think he can be a good player. The guy that I'm kind of in love with, and it's funny because two of Obo's best reps were against him yesterday, is the Tyrell Crosby kid from Oregon. I think he's unbelievably. I mean, like one of those guys. I don't want to say like Tyron Smith upside, but he's got really, really a lot of growth potential. He could be a great player. I don't know that there's been that guy this week, though, that has just screamed out like, oh, man, he's from another world. Like, there hasn't been that guy that just grabbed me.
The offensive line group seems really good when you throw in the kid from Pitt yesterday that had a pretty good day. No, I was just saying the kid from Pitt had a really good day yesterday, too. It's a really good tackle group.
It is. It's not one of those deals where there's a bunch of top 10 guys. But like middle of the first round to probably start of the third, there's going to be a lot of NFL starters get drafted there, and probably Orlando Brown will be one of those guys.
Definitely. It will be interesting.
I'm trying to find the right emoji still.
Maybe just a check
badly.
mark. Maybe just a check mark.
Let me just. I wanted to explain to
What
everyone
about
out
a
there
flag from the world
that is possibly upset with Josh's lack of engagement in the Crimson Corner and in content production lately. My video review of the state of Oklahoma is taking a monstrous amount of time. I keep having to change the dates of the stamping within the story so that I can actually hope to produce the story by the time that I'm putting all these in. It's not good. It's taking forever. I will say, though, the good news is 2019, it's kind of what we thought it was.
Right.
It doesn't look like a great group. 2020 in the state, I have found at least 3 guys that I would say that I'd never heard of when I was going into this that I think probably we'll be talking about as OU type guys. So, I mean, there's some big-time DBs. Andrew Rame is not the only offensive lineman in the state that I like in that class. There are a lot of good skill guys that I keep finding. So I mean, it's 2020 could be another one of those classes that's really good. Now, 2 years out, there's always kind of that feeling like, oh, if this guy will do this and this guy will do that. So you don't know, but I feel like there's a lot more accomplishment in these guys. These are guys that are not like, oh, he's got one good clip, that's interesting. It's guys that, oh, well, he had 7 interceptions last year. Okay, he's actually made some plays. So we'll see. But I think 2020 in state could kind of make up the difference for 2019 where OU may only sign 1, 2, or maybe even none guys from the state.
It's interesting.
Weird that they still have a floppy drive emoji. Like, people don't even know what floppy drives are.
Does Lincoln even know what a floppy drive is?
I bet Lincoln Riley doesn't know what a floppy drive is. I bet he had to deal with a floppy drive early in his coaching career.
I don't think I've ever touched a floppy drive.
My computer doesn't have a floppy drive anymore.
How old is Lincoln?
34.
Am I the closest? Yeah, I'm the closest one to his age.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Definitely.
So, I mean, I had some floppies in school, but like that's what's always so like Laney. We were looking the other day. God, not to get too off on a side on Laney, but yeah, everybody out there drink. We were looking at her elementary. Every kid in their school is issued a computer. Like, they get a computer from the school.
How old?
From the time they're in kindergarten.
Why?
I don't know. It's the craziest damn thing I've ever heard of. But what's amazing, I think back to when I was in elementary.
We should hack into all those and have them subscribe to Sooner Scoop or on the homepage.
Like, I'll just set Lady up and let her keep trading computers and all that. That's perfect. That's exactly what we'll do. No, so I think back to mine, Lake Park Lions, West Side, Oklahoma City. That's where I went to elementary. Lake Park, we had like a basement room that was set up, and it had probably like 10 computers on each side of this long. It was just basically a hallway, and you could basically have enough room to slide a chair out, slide it back in. And we had, I think KFOR came out and did a story on how advanced our computer room was. And that's what it was in about 1990, something like that. That was a big deal to have those, a bunch of, probably Apple IIs, nothing special at all. And now they're just issuing kindergartners, computers.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. Just crazy.
Technology Talk, brought to you by Soonerscoop.com.
Yeah, by the least technologically advanced of the trio. So perfect.
Concerned I drink too much. I don't remember sending out half these most recent emojis. There's the peanuts one.
I'm not much of an emoji guy.
I hate emojis.
There's a bed. There's a steak. There's a world.
You know who doesn't like emojis but is very good at basketball is Trae Young. I guess, can we fit in some basketball talk at the end?
He doesn't ever use emojis, does he? Except for hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah. Oklahoma.
It was impressive.
Big performance on Monday night or Tuesday night, 85-80 win over Kansas. So,
as someone was there that was there, best crowd in the last how many games or years even?
Probably a couple years. I will say this. I was talking to Barry Trammell and Bob Brisbillo before the game. The Trae Young hype, like just from a media standpoint and from a fan standpoint and everything that goes into it, it dwarfs anything that Buddy Hield had.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that was the most packed I've ever seen a post-game room. I bet there were.
You're saying just from the media standpoint?
From a media standpoint, yeah. I bet there were 10 tripods. And Kansas obviously, they bring quite a bit of people into town.
And it was a big game for them.
It was a big game. But just from a hype standpoint, what we're going through now, I don't think is any comparison to what Buddy Hield went through.
Well, he's been made into the. He's been made. Buddy Hield was not the face of college basketball. He was one of them.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm getting story.
At. Yeah.
But you had Ben Simmons still at LSU that everybody was talking about. Who else was really big that year? I mean, he ended up being the best player in college basketball that year. But you still had teams that year. Like you just don't have. I mean, Villanova as the number 1 team. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. And
it's Villanova.
Yeah. And Duke's probably going to end up being there at the end, but in that group,
Kentucky wasn't even ranked this week.
Yeah.
They probably will be now because they beat South Carolina, but
until they get beat again on Saturday by West Virginia. Really, it was this weekend that began the Buddy hype when he went down to Baton Rouge and beat Ben Simmons.
You're right.
It's going to be interesting. I don't think Colin Sexton has played for Alabama in the last couple games. I don't know what his status is on Saturday.
They did just beat, was it Auburn that they just beat?
Ole Miss.
Or Ole Miss.
Or Auburn, because Auburn went to Missouri last night and won by 18, so...
But I mean, in the last week, I think they've beaten.
Maybe they did
Auburn
beat Auburn
as a ranked
on Saturday,
team. Or maybe it was Clemson. I can't remember.
I don't know. It'd be interesting. Oklahoma goes down to Tuscaloosa on Saturday, though. The Big 12 race that looked to be very heated, and then over is back to being heated again.
Is anyone happier about Monday's result more than the Big 12? Because Kansas was getting ready to just run away with it.
Yeah, they had a 2-game lead.
Losing in Norman was one of the few chances they had to lose.
It's going to be interesting. They've
already won in Morgantown.
Kansas has a big stretch coming up. They play in I don't know who they play this week.
How did Texas Tech beat them at home?
That was the night that we were coming back from L.A. I think Kansas went 2 for 13 from behind the arc in the second half, or 2 for 15. They didn't hit any threes. If Kansas doesn't shoot the ball I don't think this is a Kansas team that
they're going to have an off night.
I was saying this a couple weeks ago, and then they had a 2-game lead in the conference, but I don't think that this is a Kansas team that if they're not shooting the ball, well, they don't have enough guys that can take over a game.
I absolutely love 2 things that came out of that game. One was just and I told the guys this the other day on the radio, that have we become so soft that we think it's unfair that Lon Kruger did a hack-a-bookie?
No, it was a genius move. The only people that are salty about it are Kansas basketball fans.
I think Bill Self was pissed off about it.
He should have taken him out, and I think he would have taken him out if it wasn't. But it was January 20th. He would have taken him out.
It was almost like Bill Self got caught saying, like, "I can't believe Lon Kruger is doing this to me," and just couldn't react. Like he was stunned. Because the whole story about him looking over at Lon while it was going on, and Lon not, and Kevin laughing about it.
Do you see that? Like Lon Kruger asked Toby Rowland not to ask him about it.
Really?
Over the PA because he didn't want to embarrass Azubuike. Like during his post game, and he does he comes back out and does the post game for all the fans.
Right.
Supposedly, I saw somebody tweeted that. I don't know how much validity is there, but it's something I could see Lon doing.
I mean, it was cutthroat. It was savage.
Yeah.
And I thought
you got to do what you got to do, though.
Because it's in college doesn't mean that you can't do that.
No, it was a big game too. I mean,
he went 1 for 7.
I don't care if it's high school. I don't know why that matters. That's a part of the game. If you can't shoot free throws, you can be taken advantage of.
If it's not Kansas, are people whining about it, though? I mean, people are pissed off. Kansas fans are pissed off at Bill Self. Did you see the thing where the cops had to go to the Naismith dorms?
Yeah.
That's
because
the
guy kept showing up trying to give free throw lessons to Kansas basketball players.
You know what?
I just want to know what that guy looked like.
Probably,
I really want to know. It had to be an old man, right?
No, I bet it's probably
somebody in their 60s.
Oh, I was thinking somebody probably in their 40s that just is a loser and lives and dies Kansas basketball.
Maybe has a ponytail.
Probably talks about how great Kansas basketball is when you realize they really haven't been to many Final Fours. I know they've won a national title.
Are we sure it wasn't Rick Barry?
Yeah, looking for work.
Yeah, trying to teach someone how to shoot granny shots. Scooter played there.
It couldn't have. Couldn't have happened to a better program.
I mean, it was a bad look for Bill Self.
You know what was a worse look besides keeping him in? How about you hit the boards? If you know if he's gonna miss a free throw, why don't you try to get a rebound? Kansas just was fine with running back after they missed.
I'm just glad that Matt Freeman was useful for once.
Yeah, that's it. That is true. That's probably his biggest contribution.
Really bad shooting the ball.
It's his biggest contribution to OU basketball right now is 4 fouls in 2.5 minutes. Or 5 fouls. The one was pretty bad, though, the moving screen.
Well, look, OU was in a free fall if they didn't win that game.
Yeah.
And it's not a stretch because of the schedule coming, because they've got so many games on the road still left. I mean, they played at West Virginia and TCU, and that's it, right?
They got beat in Manhattan.
Oh, and got beat in Manhattan. Yeah. So, I mean, you still got Texas. Oklahoma State they got beat.
Oh, yeah.
You still got Texas. You still got Kansas. Yeah, you still got Lubbock.
Big 12, you got to bring it every night. I mean, they get a reprieve this weekend. Everybody in the Big 12 does, stepping outside to play for the Big 12 SEC Challenge. But then they come back on Tuesday, the 30th, play Baylor, then at Texas on the 3rd, and then a big Monday with West Virginia, and then at Iowa State, at Lubbock, Texas at home, in Lawrence on another big Monday, and then K-State, Baylor, and Iowa State to round it out, and then you head to Kansas City. So
let me ask you, if Trae Young goes back to Stillwater, like the next game is in Stillwater, does OU win that game by like 10 or 20?
I think OU wins. I think OU beats OSU 7 times out of 10 in Stillwater. I mean, it took a pretty miraculous 3 to tie it up, send it to regulation, but it also took a pretty big comeback too. So,
and it took a Trae Young to kind of go into.
I think in the long run, it's going to be the best thing that's happened to him is losing those games in Manhattan and Stillwater.
I'm telling you, it was amazing watching Trae Young against Kansas. To be a guy that scored 26 points on only 9 field goal attempts, that kid's going to score no matter what. He doesn't have to take a shot. He's still going to get you 15.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, he is just he's a scorer. I mean, we got used to, I said this the other day, like we got used to, and it's a bad analogy, but it's the only one I can really make because we saw Kevin Durant play for so long. Kevin Durant could have a terrible game and still get 26.
Yeah.
Because he was a scorer. He'd get to the line, he'd get fouled. He found ways to get to the free throw line if a shot wasn't falling, or he'd just drive to the bucket. It's just like he falls out of bed and he has 10 points already.
Elite scorer.
That's kind of what Trae Young is.
And it's been talked about nationally a lot throughout the last couple, 48, 72 hours since the Kansas game, was the fact that he's coming off of his worst game as the most scrutiny as a college player, and to make those in-week adjustments shows you. Tom Crean talked about it a lot during the broadcast on
he loves
Tuesday
Brady
night.
Manick, man.
Does he?
Oh God, he had a man crush on him.
Brady Manick got a shout out from El Press, Dave Portnoy. I mean,
I saw
that's
it was the
height
Larry
of,
Bird comparison.
Yeah, that's the height of stardom, I think,
in this day and age.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I mean, and I know we bagged on him, I think, just last week, but Jay Billis's comments about Trae Young, that's pretty. I mean, like saying that the comparisons between Steph Curry are not only justified, but there is some very real reason to think they're accurate. That's crazy.
Is that what he said? I completely missed that.
He said turnovers and bad shots included. Trae Young is an absolute savant. It is not unfair, unreasonable, or wrong to compare Young to a young Steph Curry because that is exactly what his game is like. And then he talked about how Devontae Graham checked him all night, and Graham went 4 for 19. 1 for 9 from 3, and Young put up numbers. So.
When Graham fouled out,
Graham's a really good player.
As much as he held him from shooting threes, he still fouled out of the game before it was over with.
Yep. And that was, like I said, I mean, guys, I don't think we have any illusions. I watch basketball less than any of the three of us, but I mean, that dude, if you're one of those OU fans that, I just love OU football, you're missing out. Like, he's just fun to watch, man. Some of the stuff he does is just incredible.
It's kind of the golden year of OU athletics, really.
And there's still more for this team to give because Cam McGusty did not play well in that game.
I think it was good that he started to knock down a couple jumpers against Kansas. They need him to come on.
There's a lineup in there. I mean, we talk about lineups all the time with the Thunder, but there's a lineup that the Sooners have that could just be a killer down the stretch, which is Manick, Trae Young, Cameron McGusty, Jamani McNeese, and then throw whoever you want in there as that fifth guy. I mean, it could be Doolittle. Doolittle really is struggling to get back into it.
Still not. It's there, but production-wise and box score-wise, it's not there. Like, he's there physically. He hasn't had that game, that breakout game yet.
When he's in traffic and he's trying to go up to the rim,
he looks rushed.
Yeah,
he doesn't look comfortable.
He's feeling his way still. So he's going to make them better and help them by the time the year's over.
I think Christian James would probably be in that lineup.
Yeah.
At the 2, and then you play Manick at the 3.
You play McGusty's kind of as a...
I guess McGusty 3. I don't know.
You'd have to play Manick as the 4.
I'd probably put Christian James out there before I put McGusty out there right now.
But, I mean, just a bunch of wings.
Yeah. I mean, they have some guys that can score the ball. There's no doubt about that. They need to stiffen up on defense a little bit. But
they need
for
more
as much flack as the defense got against Kansas... I think Kansas scored 1 field goal in the last 4:19 of the game. So, but I guess it also helps when you're fouling them every possession too.
The hacking, Buki. All right, well, moving forward, Sooners back in good position. I think you can start. Look, if they lost to Kansas, you couldn't even really talk about Wichita versus Dallas at that point, because I think they lost their ability to get seated in a pod. But now I think you can start thinking about that again.
Oh, I think if you're in the 1 through 4, you're usually taking care of.
Well, I'm saying they're falling toward a 5 or heading in that direction.
I don't think
if they lost to Kansas.
No, I don't think it was going to be close. Because you're still going to finish in the top. If you finish in the top 4 of the conference, you're going to be fine. And their RPI is good enough. They now have 5 wins over top 10 teams.
Is it 5 or 4?
4 wins.
It's 4.
Yeah.
4. So.
Everything's good. I'm not arguing.
A bunch of opportunities to do it, to keep adding to that number.
Oh yeah,
so.
You have to go back through now.
All right, Josh, anything you want to add on recruiting moving forward, other than go to Soonerscoop.com and subscribe now for all the inside information? We haven't really talked about coaching stuff. I'll say right now a lot more smoke than fire on anything, whether it's Cale Gundy, Kerry Cooks. I do think it's something to continue to keep an eye on, but. I'm not exactly. We didn't mention that Lincoln Riley did bring in a graduate assistant from ECU today. Just a graduate assistant. He's going to replace Marcus Walker, who is now out of the program. He's spent all the time he could spend as a graduate assistant at OU. So his time is gone. He's not even with the team this semester. So the guy that he hired from ECU, I don't have his name in front of me. Only saw it earlier today. He'll be here immediately. So this semester, and help out with spring football. But we'll just connect. Just stay connected. Crimson Corner. We'll let you know if anything kind of flares up on the coaching side of things. But Josh, I mean, one thing we haven't talked about before we get out of here, it's really kind of bizarre to see Mike Stoops active on Twitter, like more so than ever.
Yeah, you want to talk about Lincoln Riley retweeting me yesterday? Mike Stoops liked the tweet. That was
Obo?
Yeah. He has been active though.
That's got to be an intern, right?
No, it's Mike told me it's him.
So what call? I mean, like he went from the desert to he's now doing it constantly.
Something sparked it. I don't know what it was.
I think it's more of a just a.
It's time for me to evolve.
High haters.
Yeah, it's more of just a like this is really stupid that I have to do this, but people are bitching about it, so I'm gonna middle finger all of you and just do it.
Oh, I love the troll tweets. Those
he knows
beautiful.
Like that it's been a thing with the fan base. Like he knows it's kind of bugged the shit out of him in the past.
It's clearly bugged some people close to him too.
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of one of those things. Like, okay,
yeah, his wife killed a guy this week. He actually killed a man.
She didn't kill a man. She Twitter killed.
There was
a
man. Ghost asking questions at OU's press conference on Tuesday after the game.
Okay.
I thought I couldn't believe it. Because I thought a man had been killed, and there he is asking questions.
He kind of gets killed a lot.
Dumbass questions at that.
All right, that's enough. Eddie's going to get Eddie too triggered. Got to get there. Thank you, no F-bombs, guys, today.
We did it. We did it.
Don't even. I'm not trying to beg for one because I need to get.
I don't even need to say one. I don't even need to say one.
All right, so OU taking on Alabama next. Signing day coming up. Josh, real quick, any official visits expected, or do you think that maybe they'll try and cram a guy or two in here before it's all said and done?
I think what you're going to see, I think this weekend's going to be quiet. I don't expect anybody. There was some conversation that Solomon Tuliaupupu, there we go. That was actually my best run at it. Was going to come in this weekend. He had told me when I saw him at the Army game he was going to take that official. I'd heard later that day it was going to be this coming weekend. I think what's happened is Oklahoma just had to make some decisions on numbers. And I think with the offer to Brayden Willis, the likelihood that he will end up as part of this class, I think Oklahoma just had to say that's the spot we can give. You know, we want Ajomo, we want Thompson, we want Tank Jenkins, we need the help and the bodies up front. We're going to let Solomon go. And now I think it's also weighted by the fact that all three of those guys I listed, OU has a realistic chance to land. I don't think they had a chance in hell of signing Solomon. Okay. So I think they not only cut ties because, you know, they needed the numbers to go to a tight end H-back, but also because he's going to USC, just like almost every other elite modern-day guy.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Unofficial 40. Appreciate Josh being a part of it as well as Eddie Radosevich. And we'll see you guys next week back here for another edition of the Unofficial 40 as we get ready for the final signing day of the year and then start heading into spring football. Going to start previewing all of that here on the website as well, Soonerscoop.com. Go and sign up, Soonerscoop.com. Promise you it's worth the $10 a month, $100 a year. Great staff now here. Bob Prisbillo with us as well. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you guys next time right back here on the Unofficial 40.
Podcasts from Soonerscoop.com.